Max.com.
Welcome back. It's on to the last push on the campaign trail. It's 11 days to go to the general election, and the politicians are sparing no time, going out on that. Now, we've talked about the president and what he's saying, but just today, Deputy President William Ruto fired back. Maybe it was a Will Smith moment, just maybe, a little shy of, what followed after. But this is what he said to President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Ile Uhuru alikuwa anataka mtu ya kusimama na yeye. Sisi ndio tulisimama na yeye. Sisi tulimpigia kura. Sisi tulimfanyia campaign. Hata wakati alikuwa Hex tulitembea na yeye. Ni kweli ama si kweli? Sasa naona rais anajaribu kunigombanisha. Mr. President, please be a decent human being.
Yeah, and he said Mr. President. So, sometimes they make references that, if you live in this country, you know who they're talking about. But today he said, Mr. President.
Yeah,
so,
because the pretense is out, is over now. You can tell from what the president is saying and what the deputy president is saying. Initially, we all along knew they were not getting along. They were no longer together. And they would refer to each other in third person, huyo mtu, huyu mtu, and so on and so forth. But now names are being mentioned and direct address. And the president has been a permanent feature in the Kenya Kwanza campaign rallies. Not directly by the deputy president, but especially by the other leaders. They have mentioned the president directly. He's not a candidate, yes, but he's been part of this campaign by their mentions and probably by what he has been doing in terms of supporting Raila Odinga's candidature. Initially, it began with the president does not want to go away. He wants to succeed himself. Then the second question was, Raila Odinga is his project. And the president has tried to respond to some of those issues. But they keep coming back and over and over and over and over. You remember even the time he was going to Sagana during that meeting, there was a Kenya Kwanza meeting at Moya constituency that I remember covering. And the Kenya Kwanza leaders then present were daring the president to come. Where kamu? And when you come, we have the following questions to ask you.
Yeah.
So he has been a permanent feature in the campaigns. And I think he will continue to be referred to. They will continue to mention his name because they feel he's an integral part of this election. Obviously, it would have been very different if the Uhuru pair was still together. Where the president is exactly where Raila Odinga would be in terms of the mashing. But because the shoe is on the other foot, that is why we find ourselves in the current situation that we find in, where we have to watch and listen to the sentiments that are being expressed by the deputy president about the president and the president about his deputy.
Yeah.
And this is why this election is interesting, as LK alluded to. Because on one hand, the expectation would be that an incumbent president would be supporting his deputy to take over. But the reverse is now working out, where an incumbent president is telling the country, my deputy is not fit to lead. And the opponent, his main opponent in the last election, is now his preferred successor. That is now why this election is as exciting, as interesting, as fireworks kind of a situation that you see as playing out currently.
Yeah, high stakes. So, Linus, where do we see things going in the next, couple of days? What's the campaign trail likely to feel like? A little bit more of that, less of it, and do these last days, really matter?
The next 11 days, we're calling it the home stretch, it's the final push, will be severe. We will see very intense campaigning. No, the gloves are off. Because really you only have 11 days.
Yeah. Actually less than if you think about it. Because they have up until the 6th.
Yes.
The election itself is 11 days away. So they've got what, maybe roughly 8 days or so?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So you only have 10 days then
to 10 minus 2, so 8.
To make or break. So remember after 9th, you you don't have a chance to say those nasty things really to make a difference. So you have to do it now. So what we will see is heavy artillery in the campaign. And you will see, and you've already seen a lot of that happening. First of all, look around, and what you see from the Deputy President's side and the Raila Odinga side is the throwing of resources into this campaign. There are suddenly more posters, more billboards.
Right.
Television ads are going up because this is the most crucial week. And the most crucial week is about crossing the 50+1 line, because both candidates are convinced that they are in 40s. So they are looking for the next 10 days, they are looking for the 10 plus that will make them cross the 50+1 threshold and be declared winner. So everything will go into battle for the next few days. You'll see very intense campaigns. You see, for example, they have released their campaign schedules, and you're talking of over 30 rallies. Competition for venues. There is the contest for the Nyayo Stadium. Although we've seen that Azimio la Umoja has actually booked the Moi International Sports Center Kasarani, which could then mean that maybe Kenya Kwanza will be using Nyayo National Stadium. This is going to be a long week for these politicians. They know this is it. You have to do everything, because in a short while, the voter will make their decision, and maybe, just maybe, what you say in the last week matters.
Yeah, what you say in the last week matters. You know, Gachuri, we've seen in certain instances where, you know, presidential teams are traveling to several counties, or one where when one team has been to this area, you know, the competitor will go back to try and undo, you know, what they've done, and going back and forth. It's, yeah, you were just telling us a little earlier about how, you know, each of those teams has done, what, how many counties in a single day?
Yeah, actually, I'm looking at it this way. It's strategically picking areas where you want to go and make that final push. Because maybe you have some loose ends to tie, or just go back for reconfirmation.
So where do you go? Do they go to the strongholds where they, you know, they know they have their support, or do they go to what might be the battlegrounds or contested zones?
It's a mix of both.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, there's some areas that you feel you need a little more in terms of pushing to increase your numbers. But you also need to go to your strongholds and make that final pitch. And in those particular areas where you have, you know, a huge number of followers, your strongholds, so to say, you go there with a message of turnout. Make sure that as many people as possible turn out. Because you also want to increase your advantage in areas where you have numbers. Make sure as many people turn up in your areas. Because in your stronghold, if the turnout is not as good, is not to the maximum, then that which would be your gain there will be lost. And your opponent, if he manages to mobilize a huge turnout in his area, then you are disadvantaged. So it's a mix of both. Strategically, make sure that as many people in your strongholds turn out. And number two, you try and get as many votes as you can in your opponent's stronghold, so to say. And then secondly, I see a situation where the campaign strategies are also anchored on what your opponent is doing. Like, for example, you've seen situations where Raila Odinga goes to the coast. As soon as he leaves the coast, William Ruto goes there. If William Ruto goes to Western, as soon as he leaves, Raila Odinga is there, and vice versa. So it's basically to try and undo what your opponent has done. You know, if your opponent has come to your stronghold, you come back there and try to cover whatever gains he will have made, and so on and so forth. So basically, is try to maintain your strongholds, but try as much as you can to get from your opponents. For me, I look at it more as an addition and subtraction kind of a political arithmetic. Try and gain as much, and try to take away as much
from your opponent.
From your opponent.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting, you know, what you said. You've noticed, you know, a big shift in the message. You know, come out and vote, because you need people now, and that's the big reminder. So I think when it comes to selling the message to the people, I want us to move to our next conversation. You know, we had the...
But before you do that, and maybe LK can chip in here, you realize that it's now a common parlance. Mambo ni mengi, masaa ndio machache. You see, these are 8 days to go.
Yeah.
I mean, you realize that there are some areas that probably you haven't been to and you need to go to. You realize that probably there are some areas that you need to do a bit of fine-tuning, and you have to. Yet you have to do all these within a span of eight days. That's why you realize the presidential candidates, initially, they would hold rallies, let's say in one county, several constituencies in one county. But today, or the next 8 days or so, you will see a situation where they are combing 4 or 5 counties in a day. And, you know, whistle-stop tours. You go in, you address 10 minutes, 20 minutes, you go to another place, and so on and so forth. It's basically to try and populate your campaigns as much as you can.
And make sure that you're top of mind for the voters. That
yes.
you are the person that they think about, you know, when they go to the ballot, when they sleep at night, like on that 9th. You know,
and the memory,
they have your, yes,
like the last person who was here is so and so.
And
you know?
so, yeah.
But at the same time, and probably LK can guide us here, or can add here, this is the period, these 8 days will be the period that will be extremely expensive for the presidential candidates and even for the other candidates who are vying for various elective seats.
Yeah.
You budget for this because it's the final push. You will see you have to spend a lot of resources, not only to mobilize the rallies, but also eventually to mobilize the turnout. So there is that budget, there is that kitty that now informs what we are seeing.
Hii ni sasa ile yenye kwa chini ya kitanda, now you bring it out and you open it up and you know, spend. Linus?
There's something that makes this election completely unusual, and that is the lack of a clear pattern among voters on how they actually intend to vote. There is less predictability in this election than previous elections that we have witnessed. I see talk of strongholds, and I don't buy that because the patterns are not as predictable as they were in 2017, 2013, 2007. You know, candidates used to start with a huge bag of votes that you are assured you're going to get, and this is what is informing this frantic running around. I mean, you see the two candidates, particularly Raila Odinga and William Ruto, running around like headless chicken because there is an aspect in this election, an aspect of carrying water with a sack. So it's leaking, and you don't know when you actually have it. And particularly one region has played with the minds of these two candidates. And I would love to see what their evenings look like after rallies in central Kenya. Mount Kenya has completely traumatized William Ruto and Raila Odinga.
Yeah.
Because you have to keep going there. You have to keep going there, and you're not sure whether you've locked it. That is why you see them coming back. You know, it has become like the default place to take a break from. So you go to Mombasa, come back to Kirinyaga. Go to Nakuru, come back to Kiambu. Go to Turkana, go to Nyeri. You know, you have to keep going there. And I don't know whether you've carried that schedule for the rallies. You know, you would see interesting pairing, you know, where you do a rally in Narok, and then you have to dash back to Kiambu. Central Kenya has driven the two completely mad because, first of all, this is the region that will be very critical in how this election will play out. William Ruto needs a high turnout in Central Kenya and the same kind of vote that Uhuru Kenyatta got in 2017 or even 2017 for him to actually make a very realistic chance of getting the presidency. Raila Odinga, on the other hand, this is a region he's been performing so poorly. It's never really voted for him. He needs to bite a huge chunk. So huge, though, that it must be huge enough to cover any losses he has suffered elsewhere in the traditional strongholds.
Western
say
and
Western
Coast.
And Coast.
Yeah.
Although, for now, when you look at the numbers, these are just narratives. And you know, you really have to wait for the 9th of August to see what are people in Kwale actually saying, what are people in Bungoma saying, what are they saying in Vihiga, what are they saying in Kirinyaga. Because there are a lot of theories and assumptions and all that. But the fact that they keep going back to Mount Kenya, it's because none of them has anything in the bank yet. They have to wait. And then there's something unique also about Central Kenya. The legendary wait for the last minute, where now next week is perhaps the most critical week to have a campaign in Central Kenya and to have to place yourself in the minds of voters there, because next week is decision week. They make their decision very late in the day, and normally it's a very, very decisive poll. I always keep referring to the decision that saw Mwai Kibaki push his numbers in 1997 election up. Remember, Kenneth Stanley Njindo Matiba was running, and Matiba had a fanatical following. He's from Murang'a, he has a lot of supporters there. And the Mount Kenya originating voters who were in the diaspora really voted for Matiba in large numbers in 1992. So he hoped to carry the same in 1997. But something happened in the evenings, late into the election, that, even if he wins, how do you think he'll be sworn in? There was a rumor around that was passed that suddenly then pushed Mwai Kibaki to a very strong number 2 in 1997, just behind Moi. Last-minute decision-making. Let's see, will there be last-minute decision-making in Central Kenya that will change things any significantly? That's something you can only speculate, but largely wait until the evening of 9th to see what the patterns look like.
Yeah.
Of course, I would itch to say something.
Go for it.
You see, the last minute may not probably be a big deal. For me, what I think is a big deal in the Mount Kenya region, and that is why every presidential candidate, especially the two main contenders, are eyeing the mountain, is because of the number of votes they are in. I mean, it's a huge vote basket. And
with no candidate of their own this time, yeah.
It's up for grabs. Originating from there largely. But remember, this was also a region, if you manage to get those votes in bulk, like Mwai Kibaki did in 2007, like Uhuru Kenyatta did in 2013, 2017, you start with a solid base. So the idea is, and this is, I think, where the race will be won or lost, is number one, in terms of the turnout. If the turnout in Mount Kenya region will be high, and you manage to get as many votes as you can from that region, then it is an advantage to you. If the turnout will not be as high, then it means it will be a challenge. So the idea is to mobilize as many people to turn out to vote as possible. I mean, a county like Kiambu, for example, you're talking about in excess of 1 million votes, 1.4 thereabout. So if you have a turnout, let's say, of about 1 million, and you manage to get like 700,000 votes, you're way ahead. But if the turnout remains low, the votes will be high on paper, but if they're not high on the ballot day, then it will be a problem. So I think ideally the main issue will be turnout, especially in the Mount Kenya region.
All right.
And look, let's acknowledge one thing. This is an experiment that has never been carried out in Central Kenya. This is the first time in 30 years, since the advent of multi-party politics, that they actually have to choose from candidates who don't come from the region. So that is another unknown. How will it go? Because there are a lot of assumptions, even in terms of polls and the fact that, it's Raila Odinga versus William Ruto in there. We still have to acknowledge that on the morning of the election results, we'll be looking at that and saying, oh, what an experiment by Central Kenya. They have chosen from 2 candidates who do not come from the same region for the first time since the multi-party system came to place. Remember, in '92, they had a choice between Kenneth Matiba and Mwai Kibaki. In 1997, Kibaki again, Matiba was there, and even the list grew, to other candidates, later on to include the likes of the late Wangari Maathai. In 2002, it was a race between 2
Yeah, yes, that's right.
Of Central Kenya's...
That's right. Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta.
Mwai Kibaki and Uhuru Kenyatta. It was such a good time for the region. Easy decision. Pick the older one, keep the young one for some time later. And then 2013, the game plan of 2002 came to play that, okay, the younger one has grown, is ready to take over from Mwai Kibaki. And remember the crossing over by Kenyatta. Something he did which has never been done in the Commonwealth, where you have the official leader of opposition
joining government.
Joining government. And he did that strategically because he knew after Mwai Kibaki, who is next? It's him. And then the run has come to this. He's done 10 years. But now there is no big player coming from the central region. And so for the first time, they have to pick from outside. So let's acknowledge this is also going to be an experiment that we should marvel about.
Yeah, whichever way this goes, that's some very interesting insights.
Good thing is it's democracy at play. Because rightly, as you put it, the contrast of 2002 was two local boys contesting. Now you have a reversal of the same, where you have two main boys from outside the region competing for the region. So an interesting experiment. Let's see how it turns out. But ultimately, the number of people who will turn out on the 9th of August 2022 will be the determinant of that which you call an experiment. So
you guys are talking about turnout. It was a 50% turnout at the presidential debates. I think for both debates, for both debates actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, so here we go. I think I'll start with you, Francis, because maybe this one...
Should we start with you?
No, we'll come to me later at the end. But I'm interested to know for Francis what it was like. Last week you were, in the hot seat, and this week you were now a spectator. What were your views around this one?
True, I was mpenzi mtazamaji, but was, of course, working behind the scenes, which was quite interesting. But I liked the conduct of the debate. I don't know whether to call it a debate or an interview, because it would have been a great one if the two contenders came to the podium. But be it as it may, the fact that on one hand, there was a question as to whether either of them would turn up, who would turn up, who would not turn up, and whether they would turn up together was something that we kept grappling with over and over. But suffice to say, I think it was a reversal of the situation that we had the previous week, where two candidates came and engaged. This time, it was more into probing the issues and the promises that are being made by the candidate, especially William Ruto, the Kenya Kwanza candidate, and Wahiga Mwaure, the Agano candidate. I think it was an interesting one. There were political reasons as to why Raila Odinga didn't turn up. He explained that in the campaign trail. As to whether he did the right thing or not, didn't do the right thing, is out there for the voters to judge. But from an organizer's point of view, I would have loved to see both of them side by side,
debate,
in a proper debate. So that also, some of the promises that they have been making on the campaign trail can be interrogated so that they can also question each other. I've seen the two candidates address each other in a political rally. It would have been great to see them address each other in a more controlled environment that is, devoid of supporters and the excitement of it, but now facing each other man to man, eyeball to eyeball, and pose questions to each other.
Yeah, that's right. So, with the first debate, we had David Mwaure Wahiga, who had, a good 90 minutes, to explain himself. We also did have an appearance by the Roots Party presidential candidate. He came in, he said what he wanted, and then he left. And then, so let's talk about that one as well.
Are you saying he came to the debate to say that he's not participating in the debate?
That's exactly what he did.
Okay.
Yeah, he came to tell us that he wasn't coming. If you can understand that. That was interesting.
Let's be kind to the professor. That is an in-person cancellation of participation. So he came and canceled.
Yeah, at least he was kind enough to, come and tell us that in person.
Yes, yes.
So, I mean, let's talk about, David Maure Wahiga. He also had his moment in the spotlight, and he came and he, presented his plans to the people.
But first, let me start by congratulating 66.6% of the panel tonight for moderating the debates.
That's a strong finish.
Very, very well done.
Yeah.
No need for VAR.
Yeah, 50% plus one.
Yeah, round one.
Very, very well done.
Thank you.
But yes, Wahiga Maure, impressive, extremely impressive, honest, sincere. He didn't lie. He didn't throw about any inaccuracies. There was one slip that came through, but I think it's one of those things that just somehow come out, but not quite intended. He said something to do with being the first lawyer to run for office. I mean, there have been a number of lawyers that have run for president. But I liked his organized thought process. He's very clear from the opening statement on what he thinks has gone wrong in the country. He basically fought the big boys and said, no, they've been there. They've been there, and they've not made the change that should be made. He spoke of a lot of wastage in public spending. He spoke of corruption, and he was very clear on what he really wants to see done. And it's unfortunate he didn't get to debate any of these other opponents. And I think that is the only low side of this presidential debates that we've had this week, that the candidates actually never turned up to debate each other. I remember Professor Wajakoya arriving, and we thought, he could end up on the stage somehow. But he actually made good his threat and said he's just coming to announce that he's not taking part in the debate, and then he had to leave the place. Something that really forced the media, the joint media organizers of the debate, to change the format also. And what this ended up being was a format that saw the moderators, Yvonne particularly, and Eric Latif, having to engage the candidate in debate 2, and also Smriti Vidyarthi and Ken Mijungu engaging Wahiga Maure as a one candidate in the first debate. Now, there's something then that comes up as something that politicians need to rethink. Because if you do not have your opponent to debate, you will be forced to face the journalists. And we saw how that can go. And at this point, we exclude the host of this show from contributing. We saw how that went, because it becomes then a proper journalistic assignment. Conduct it in the journalistic ways that you should. Ask the hard questions. Hold the candidate to account. Dig up his record and all that. In traditional debates, that is supposed to be the responsibility largely of your opponent. But we've also seen something, and I want to draw the example of the Rigathi Karua debate. Candidates hold back. They don't turn up to debate. You could see they blindside each other, and I'm going to talk to the moderator. I'm not interested in talking to you. I don't want to engage you, which then beats the purpose of the debate. It's supposed to be an interactive thing.
An engagement.
An engagement. All these things, for example, that were raised by our moderators right through those one candidate debates are supposed to, for example, come from your opponent. The opponent has to come and question you about your record on corruption, your record on governance, your utterances, your flip-flopping and all that. And I think that's what candidates miss when they don't turn up for debate, because you are supposed to come and challenge your opponent along those lines. But then we saw in the Rigathi Karua debate that they can also turn up and also not engage. Why do they do that, and why do they don't turn up? I want to answer those two questions. It's pure political consideration. Because debates can build, but debates can also hurt completely. They can build in the sense that you reveal a good candidate. You reveal good ideas. You reveal a person with clear thought process. I must, for example, mention Justina Wamae, the running mate of Wajakoya, for that clarity, ability to debate. And
conviction, passion.
And she's a conviction speaker. You can see passion. There is no difference between what she's saying and what she believes. Compared to the rest of some of the debates that we saw, where you can see a whole gap between what somebody is saying and what they actually stand for. Justina came through as a conviction politician. She effuses belief. You can believe her. You can go straight from listening to her and to smoking bang. There's conviction. She tells you clearly it works and all that. And that is a very nice thing about Justina. I think for Justina Wamae, this was really her revelation time. She was launched into the Kenyan political space. And I think actually she could have very comfortably debated the tier 2 candidates very, very ably. And she came out as a revelation. So debates can build in that sense. Now, debates can also go south if you turn up as on the weaker side of things. I sat on the moderator's table with Joe Ageo in 2017, and we waited for President Uhuru Kenyatta to come and debate Raila Odinga. There is something about incumbency that doesn't work with debates. And this, I'm sure the political communicators out there are happy to hear from journalists saying the same thing. Because yes, if you come to a debate with a bad record, you'll have an extremely bad night. Because your opponent will convert this to a referendum. And it is a 90-minute referendum that will leave you in tatters, especially if you have a bad record. In 2017, for example, by the time the debate was happening at the Catholic University, Jubilee had not delivered on the stadiums. They had not delivered laptops. They cheated 6-year-olds who had then become, 11-year-olds? There was so much. As moderators, our duty that night would have been to just sit there and watch the massacre and make sure, it's done in a humane way. And we do the disposal. That is the downside of debates. Debates also require that you perform, you are consistent, and you are clear. You have a clear record to defend. Because there is something that the politicians must have learned, especially last Tuesday. There's a huge difference between debates and interviews and panel discussions, and more importantly, rallies. Debates are very exacting. It's about, please cut the crap and tell me facts. Let's deal with issues as they are. And it's a very tight space. It's also a very intimidating stage, I must say. And this is an observation I made from just watching some of the candidates. They would actually shiver. They're shaking. They're nervous. Their voices are
falter a little.
Faltering. They also stammer. These are things they don't do in public rallies, but they do. There are a lot of lights in the debate. The distance between your interviewer and the candidate is in itself intimidating. And then, bad luck to you when you have moderators that have prepared so well. They have everything. They have engaged the topics. They have engaged the research in the kind of depth that was demonstrated by Yvonne and Eric on Tuesday.
Let me put it this way. Of course, you are excluded from this discussion. This is...
Maybe I should just leave and allow you.
This is how I look at it. You see, one of the reasons why these debates should continue, whether one candidate does not turn up or both candidates turn up, the reason why these discussions must continue is because campaign rallies are largely a one-way traffic. It is the candidate telling the electorate what I will do. The electorate rarely gets an opportunity to ask questions, to question the candidate, to, demand certain answers, they rarely get an opportunity to do that. But in debates, and in the event that one does not turn up and the other turns up, you will get an opportunity to be asked a lot of questions. And this is how I saw it work. All the candidates who are invited were given a list of topics that will form the basis of the moderation or the basis of the debate. It is not for the candidates to say, ask me question this and this and this on this topic, or don't ask me questions on topic 1, 2, or 3. You go prepare for all the 8 topics, but also be ready to be asked questions on all those topics, or one of the topics, or 2 of the topics. And this is also what is interesting for me about those debates. The past is as important as the present, because it helps to shape the future. If you can't account for what you did, then you must also be held to account to test your ability and fitness to go to the future. And probably those are some of the issues that the Deputy President faced, because he has an incumbency around him, having been part of the Jubilee administration, something that Wahiga Mwaure did not suffer, because he's never been in power. So there's nothing to hold him to account, maybe for personal reasons, on personal promises or personal things that he has done. But in terms of public engagement, public office, he didn't suffer that challenge. But the Deputy President did. If Raila Odinga turned up, he would have faced a similar challenge, because he has also been in government. He has made certain promises. So there are certain things that he would have been asked. There are some issues relating to his past, his conduct, his engagements that would have come to the fore. So I think let this culture of debates continue, because it also offers an insight to reveal, more or less like peeling the mask on the candidates.
Yeah, I mean, look, as we close, I won't talk about the conduct of the candidates, except to say 2 things. One, it is an operation like I have never witnessed, and I have been in this industry not as long as you know, some of you here, about 16, 17 years. But let me tell you, all media houses from all departments, administration, IT, guest relations, technical, production, I mean, that was a massive operation in which people from media, there was no media house. We were all one. It was one huge media house, and it was moving
one huge newsroom.
Yes, and it was moving in sync like one body, as if, you know, we've all been working together for decades. And so just on that sheer scale alone, I remember just stepping back and seeing how important, you know, the moment was, in terms of just everybody coming together with one single goal, which was to have, you know, a production that meets the desired goals, which was to bring all of the candidates there to sort of face the nation. So that was impressive. I think it's been said before, it is a very solemn spiritual role to play. And I think the last thing I will just say is it was the honor of my career, the highlight of my career so far, to have participated in this and to have conducted that debate. And, you know, like you say, that stage is big for the candidates. It is big as well, you know, on that stage when you're conducting, you know, the debates and moderating that. And, yeah, it is something I will remember, for good, for bad, for, you know, everything that happened. That was a big one, and I was honored to have played that national duty. So.
And you did well. The only challenge is that in such a debate, there is no winner.
No.
Or loser.
Yeah.
And I put it that way because where you sit will also determine where you stand.
Of course.
If you ask the supporters of Deputy President, they will say
he won.
He did very well.
Yeah.
If you ask those who don't support him, they will say he performed dismally. Even for the moderator, those who think the Deputy President did very well, they will say the moderator was very bad. And those who think the Deputy President did very badly, they will say the moderator was very good. So, unfortunately, there is no scorecard, there is no report card. It is now left to the public, to the electorate, to make a decision on what they saw.
And let me say this, it's not about who wins and who loses. It's about having a conversation. And it's about talking, and, you know, a big tenet of democracy. Look, I think we just want to end it there. So, shall I play the who will play Jamila today?
You still
okay.
play Jamila.
So I say that's it, and then again it is I that starts with the final words tonight.